talk about attributes and how to do some cleanup on them because they can kind of be a pain. And so I wanted to share some of my tips for, let me close this right here. Here am I recording. Okay, yeah, and I also want to test my stream settings because it's been a while since I've played with these here on OBS. So, okay, let's get into it. So what I wanted to talk about today was the attributes and the attribute manager specifically. So what I'm currently working on is actually going through and renumbering my my building materials, and there's always a challenge in trying to renumber these. And so what I wanted to share was a workflow for how I'm doing that and creating these new ID numbers, because it's really important in ARCHICAD to have consistent numbering where you don't have any gaps between numbers on attributes, because library parts, the macros and stuff will be searching for these attribute numbers, and so it's really important not to have any blank ones. So what I've done is I've actually in this last process going through my template and updating these attributes, what I've done is I've actually tried to really match up as close as possible to the ARCHICAD22 default building materials, which you can see I just loaded here real quick, and we can see that they start here with number 1 as masonry, and all the way down to 72 they have essentially their standard default ARCHICAD22 building materials. So what I've done in my template is I've kind of cleared the way for numbering 1 through 72 so that I could then import the building materials and do my assignment here. And so what I mean by clearing the way is I actually went through and duplicated and deleted each of my building attributes that were between 1 and 72. And those essentially all fell down here at the bottom with new renumbering. And you can see I labeled everything with a copy note here just so I know that's a copied attribute. And so what I'm now doing, now that I've loaded in the new attributes for the building materials from the ARCHICAD template 1 through 72 and renamed them and noted here that they're coming in as new, I'm now ready to kind of continue on after that, starting with number 72 is where I finished. And so I want to start adding 73, 74, we'll skip 75 and 76, but I have several gaps here as I go down into my attribute numbers for my building materials that I'm going to want to fill in essentially. So to do this, it's kind of a complicated thing in ARCHICAD. Attributes can always be a little bit of a pain. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually close this out right here. And I want to start adding at a number 73. So the whole purpose and the whole goal is to try to get a attribute over here that's a known attribute that I want to plug in with that number 73. And so in order to do that, I'm going to kind of start at the bottom here because these are the highest number attributes that I have. And I'm going to actually pick wood would be a good one, this wood iJoist copy, because I'm starting at 72, which has wood, and then I want to kind of continue on with the same trend just so it's a little bit easier to manage later. So what I'll do is I'm actually going to append this over, and I want to append it essentially, there's a few different ways we can append this. So if I append by just normal append, we can see here that with the settings that I have, it's just adding it as 1, and it did not bring across the fill type or surface. We can see that they're missing here. And that's because I didn't have this option checked, which would have included all those attributes. So if I clear this one out and check that and click back on this side and append it now, we can see that it did include those attributes, but it renamed everything to that number 1 in the attribute number. So what I actually will do, I mean, I could work with this no problem and rename this item here under 1. But what I'm actually going to do in this case is I'm going to append it one more time, and this time I'm going to use it by index number. And so if we do that, it'll bring through our index number, this 178, and 15 and 16 for my fill and my surfaces. So so the next step here, because now we can take this and what I'm going to do is I'll actually export this out into a XML format, and I'm just going to plug it in here, and I'm just going to call this 178 wood I-joist to 73 is what I wanted to rename this as. So if I export this out, and I'm just going to save this as an XML, I'm going to go into my settings here, and I'm going to pull up this folder where that published to, and I'm just going to right click on this, and I'm going to open with WordPad here. And so what from here, this essentially this is the XML. We can actually go in and start editing some of this information in here, but essentially what this is, it's a big file that's going to essentially carry all the attributes of that building material, including all the linked attributes such as different fills. If we start going down through here, we can see what some of these will be, and we can actually see the different settings here. But in order to find the attribute number that I want to go in and replace with a new numbering, the easiest thing that I could do is just simply do a find, and the number that we started with was at 178. So if I just do a search for 178 here, I can do a find next, and I can even go in and highlight where that is, and we'll just see where that's popping up. So the first time in this file that it's looking for that index number that would essentially we want to rename from 178 to 73 is actually way down here, almost towards the end of this XML file. And we can see under the attributes type building materials, we have a reference ID, and then we also have a an index number, that IDX equals 178. So essentially that is the number that we'd want to be renaming to our new attribute number for importing that back in and having a number that we can then work with. So I'm actually going to do a find next and see if there's any others, and there is one more right there, so I'm going to highlight that one as well. And so we have those, and at this point I can just go in and just rename this number to 73 because that's the index that I wanted, and all we'll have to do is save this. So this is just giving me a little note about the formatting because I did highlight those, so we can just continue. And okay, so as we do that, we just resave this, and so now what I can do is I can come back here, and I'm going to delete this out. And actually I know this isn't going to work this first time, but we'll fix it the next time. So if we go to try to import that file that we just went in and renamed, I've noticed that this has not been working with the settings that I had just used. So we'll try opening this. Oh, actually, you know what? It did work that time. That's weird. Last time I did that, it gave me an error message, and I was going to walk through the steps for how to fix the error message. But in that case, it seemed to work just fine. So, okay, so with this, what we can now do is now we can go back and I can actually rename this if I want. I'm going to call this wood I-joist, and I'm going to give it a parentheses for an N for new. And I'm going to come back up here, and I'm going to see right where I want to put it, which is essentially right underneath there. So what I'll do, and what's nice here is because this shares the same attribute numbers, we're fine with importing these fills or surfaces. We could actually choose not to import those if we wanted to exclude these as we add them to our project, so it doesn't overwrite any existing fill or surface attribute numbers. But what I'm going to do is, we'll come up here and we'll just go ahead and we'll import this one. We're going to move it back this direction, and we're going to do it by index. If we just did it by append, then it would essentially add this to the end of the list, which isn't what we'd want because it would start at 181. We want to do it by that index number that we went through the process to manually override, and we will just import by index in this case. So we'll add that here. We can now see that we have our same settings of our fills and our surfaces. And so at this point, we're then good. And the final step here is to go down to our original attribute. And we want to delete this. And we will just simply reassign the deleted attributes corresponding elements in our project to that newly created building material that has the correct attribute number of 73 in this case. So I'm just going to replace that. Now we don't have the old one, and we have the new one up here. And by doing it this way, it's a little bit time consuming and tedious, but you really learn to control what your attribute numbers are, and all the contents in this template file that was assigned to that original attribute has now been reassigned to that new one. So we didn't disconnect any information in our model or override our settings with any new attributes that didn't match the anticipated target. So, okay, anyway, I hope this was useful. I know attributes are always something that are kind of a pain to work through and figure out, and periodically it's good to go through and do some updates. So that's what I'm working on right now to prepare for the next release of my template. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this video. I thank you for watching, and stay tuned. We got some new projects or new live streams coming out. On February 1st, I'm going to be doing a preview of my new release of my template, as well as walking through an example project looking at a completed design that I cost loaded with the reporting engine that I've developed. So stay tuned for that. That'll be on February 1st, and I'll probably put out a few other little previews and other vids between now and then. But yeah, if you want to get updates on any of my videos or content, check out my website, www.contrabim.com, and sign up for my newsletter there. So I'll be sending out some updates and notifications for future events here very soon. So, okay, with that, I'm going to wrap this one up, and I hope to see you guys online here sometime soon.